is. So why would they tell him what the plan is? It's a point of the movie. They're angry because they didn't tell the white guy, Poe Dameron, the plan, and the women were conspiring against him. White genocide, hysterical stuff. But we got these reactionary people coming out online since Trump has been president, and maybe they're beginning to notice that the culture is leaving them. So we have a black stormtrooper. Now, one of the best movies of the series is Rogue One. Total rebellion, multiracial, and they are the ones that steal the original plans for the Death Star that would be used in A New Hope, the 1977 movie. Lots of women. I mean, women all over the place. Landing ships, shooting, blasting, killing, everything on behalf of the rebellion. So, and of course, we can't forget, again, the moving forward with the, more integration. Samuel L. Jackson was a Jedi. Y'all remember that? Samuel L. Jackson was a Jedi. He had his purple lightsaber. So yes, he got to be a Jedi. The first black Jedi I think I ever saw. So, we have all this going on, and Star Wars has always been a little bit out there. Meanwhile, here's the funny thing. When you look at all the movies in order, and then you get to 1977 Star Wars, I wonder how many parents explain to their kids, Mom, Dad, where the black people went? They were all over the place in the one before. What happened? And then Lando comes in the next picture. So it's really a funny thing that I think about when I imagine people watching A New Hope. Now, finally saying Star Wars was always commenting on America. Its military-industrial complex, its lack of freedoms when you think about what's going on now, voter suppression. We have a president that pretty much says, I can do whatever I want. He said this. The Constitution allows me to do it. Sounds like the Emperor from Star Wars. We have Palpatine in power. The way it discusses the doing away with freedoms in the first 1977 movie, when they're around their big corporate table in the Death Star. And they're all in their spiffy uniforms. The only oddball in the room is Darth Vader. How'd you get that black man's voice? Very suspicious, Vader. Anyway. And they're all discussing the dissolution of the Imperial Senate. Well, how will the Emperor keep control? The local authorities and governors will maintain control over the systems. Talk about your Federalist Papers and the devolution of power. So they've destroyed freedom. That's why they would say, can we restore freedom to the galaxy? So when you look at what's going on now, you find there's a lot to look at inside Star Wars. About how power, in fact, the first 3 episodes, just watch them. Never mind what the Star Wars fans kind of don't like them. Just look at the politics of it. Over 3 movies, a freedom-loving society winds up at the end of the 3rd movie with a dictator who actually screams, absolute power. Again, we have a president that has said, I think the Constitution gives me the right to do whatever I want. He doesn't answer subpoenas. He's totally defiant and doesn't care about the institutions, just like the Imperial Senate in New Hope was dissolved. So yeah, there's a lot to say about America in Star Wars. So, if you don't think that, well, then you just weren't paying attention. Yes, even with the mistakes like Jar Jar Binks, the kids love him. That's all I can say. And of course, the Star Wars has had a lot of subversion in it to compensate for goofball ideas. Like I always thought the Ewoks should have been a little more savage and dangerous. We forget they're cute, but they were getting ready to eat Han Solo. And Princess Leia was trying to talk him out of it. And they had to have C-3PO impersonate a deity to talk him out of it. But they were cute. We just forget that they're going to eat people, But Star Wars has more to say about what's going on than even the vaunted Star Trek. And maybe that's good. We're out, we don't have anything to do with that anymore. You know, we're out here in space, we're enjoying ourselves. That's ancient history to us. You know, one day, the descendants of us will say what we went through is ancient history. Pray that they don't say, what the hell were y'all doing? But that is why Star Wars has always been left-wing propaganda. If you haven't noticed that, radical, take down the government stuff, coming from a guy that came out of the 60s enraged at what he thought was an unjust war that took place. So, from the 60s through now, and the basis of why Star Wars was so popular with an audience that had been primed by television, not movies, not books, television, to be ready for this. And there you have it. Anybody got any questions to pepper me with about my thesis? Yes, Ms. Mary.
I have a friend who has this theory that the force is that the people that you see who are able to use the force are always come from the slave or the servant class. Like Luke is a child of someone who was a servant. The little kids that you see at the end of
Oh yes, the end of Last Jedi. The kids who are at the end of Last Jedi. The question.
Servants.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly the little kid is able to use the force without quite knowing. That's her theory, is that, you know, that it's really about, it's an anti-slavery thesis. That's what she heard this.
Yes, because Luke Skywalker comes from a raggedy family. His father, Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, comes from a raggedy family. His mama was a slave, an actual slave. You don't see rich people. There's not an officer or a high mucky muck. Now, the only thing I can say that's different from that must mean the good side of the Force. Because Palpatine seems comfortable the minute I see him. He's got nice clothes, wonderful accoutrements, and lives in luxury. Yet he has the evil side of the Force. So the Force can work with rich and poor. But the conceit seems to be the poor people are so close to what's real that I could never really go down the evil dark side. You know. And the Emperor did. He was already on the dark side. And his coup was to get a good person to come over. A good person to come over in the guise of Anakin Skywalker, who was Luke's father. Luke and Leia's father, to be more precise. So he starts out a heroic Jedi and turns into a stooge for kind of like the Republican Party. They started out heroic Jedis, freeing black people and trying to get our rights for us, and now they've gone to the dark side. Okay? So, yeah, there is that. There is that. But I would caution that I guess you can be rich and go to the dark side like that. You know. But yes, the good guys seem to come from lower class in this mythical society. So I would say that. Anything else? Why you got me? Any questions? How about you, Vera? You've had time to think about my outrageous thesis.
I always forget that Star Wars and Star Trek
Are different.
I know, but I would get them mixed up.
Well,
I know they're different characters and stuff, but
well, I'll tell you this. Star Wars owes a lot to Star Trek, the television series.
say that again.
Star Wars owes a lot to Star Trek, the television series. I would say after all that, for those who ran out and said, I'm going to watch Star Trek, I've seen everything else. As the series progressed, I'm talking about the 60s television show, you're introduced to the Klingons. They're about to go to war with them until a Deus Ex Machina saves them. That's the evil Klingon Empire. Where before that, we meet the Romulans, whom the Earth had a war with 100 years before Kirk's time. So we've got hostile aliens who, again, were standing in for, the Klingons were the communist Russia, and the Romulans were the Red Chinese. So they were standing in, and the Federation, again, was the United States of America. The whole thing was transplanted into space so they could comment on the newspapers without actually saying commie and die Yankee dog. So, so you have that going. Now, Jedi Knights. Mr. Spock is a Jedi Knight. He's got the same powers practically as a Jedi Knight. He can go into your mind and do a Vulcan mind meld. He can make people who aren't too bright, just like Obi-Wan Kenobi, do what he wants. Captain Kirk and he were trapped at Spear Point. And they had to contact the ship, but their communicator was confiscated by the primitive girl. So Spock just does his thing and gets the primitive girl in the fur bikini to open up the communicator to warn the ship to come get him. Press the emergency button. Obi-Wan makes the guy in the famous scene, these aren't the droids you're looking for. These aren't the droids we're looking for. You don't want to detain us. We don't want to detain you. We can go about our business. You can go about your business. Move along. Move along. That's what Spock did. Now, remember when Alderaan was blown up and they were on the Millennium Falcon in the first movie? And Obi-Wan goes, oh, what's the matter? I heard a voice as if thousands of voices cried out and was suddenly silenced. In an episode of Star Trek, an all-Vulcan starship was disintegrated by an alien entity. And Spock practically faints on the bridge. Like he got all of their thoughts, their final thoughts, cascading through him, and he felt that. So yes, Spock is a Jedi. Very disciplined and has these strange disciplines. The only thing he doesn't have is telekinesis. That's the only thing he was denied. But Spock could probably be a Jedi. He could make it through the course, advanced student, no time at all. Okay? So you have that. And just like their story is told against a universe caught in turmoil, the Enterprise story was told against a universe that was ever expanding and dangerous. The first battle between good guys and a Death Star was on a Star Trek episode called Doomsday Machine, in which an ancient vehicle that could slice up and destroy planets and eat them was working its way towards our section of the galaxy, and they had to stand against it and us. One of my favorite episode, the Doomsday Machine. It is the first battle between anybody and a planet-killing Death Star. So yeah, Star Wars owes a lot to Star Trek. So if you get Star Trek, which a lot of people did, you're prepared for Star Wars. All the politics, all the this and that. The first scene in which aliens and human beings are socializing was not the famous bar scene in Star Wars. It was on an episode of Star Trek, Journey to Babel, where the Starship Enterprise had to carry all these diplomats to make a treaty happen. They got the little aliens, they got the tall aliens, they're all drinking and they're having, and the Vulcans are there, the Tellarite, the pig-like people are there. That's the first time. Again, Star Wars owes a lot to Star Trek. So that's another thing. Again, out of the 60s pantheon of television shows that reach millions of people. So by the time you get there, it's like, okay, I'm ready. It's cool. I understand everything. You notice they don't explain a lot to you in Star Wars. You just have to get it. Like, of course, naturally. The Emperor. We never meet the Emperor in person until Jedi. He's an off-screen presence. So
Star Wars started as a TV series.
no. I'm talking about Star Trek. Star Wars has always been a movie.
Okay, and they have a whole bunch of, how many different ones do they have?
Of what?
Star Wars.
Well, if you want to be technical, I said 12 movies.
12.
Yes, but nobody watches the TV, made-for-TV Ewoks movies. But they do count as Star Wars movies. Yes, yeah. So,
I looked at Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Trek. I love it. But I always did see some type of political message in Star Trek.
oh, yes.
I always did, but I didn't realize it in Star Wars.
Yes. Star Wars is just a more hot-blooded version.
Yeah.
You know, somebody gets hurt every 20 minutes
I also-
in a Star Wars movie.
I also know a little fact about what's his name, the one who played you were just heard me talking about.
Lando.
Yeah.
Oh, Billy D. Williams?
No, Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy.
He